Thanks. So welcome everybody to today's webinar, the first webinar in the new year. So happy new year to all attendees and to all participants of the webinar from our side. Today we have Andrea Sommese talking about head tilting dogs. But before we start, I will just remind everyone for two housekeeping rules. If you have any question regarding the presentation or regarding the topic, please feel free to drop them in the chat box, or if you prefer to state them in person, raise your virtual hand and we will call your name and you can ask your question in person at the end as well. Please keep in mind also to mute your microphone during the presentation, and to also take care that you switch off the camera to make the presentation and to make the connection as smooth as possible for everyone. So with this being said, I'm very happy today to present Andrea as our speaker. He's going to talk about behavior in dogs that we frequently see, but we actually do not know a lot about. It's what you see in the picture, the head tilting of the dog in certain interactions with humans in particular. Andrea is right now working at the Eötvös Loránd University in Hungary, in Budapest. And he recently and last year graduated at the Czech University of Life Science in Animal Science. His background covers a lot the behavior and cognition of dogs. And I'm very happy to present him today as speaker. And I'm very looking forward to know more about dogs tilting the head.
So, hi, thanks for having me here. As Christian mentioned, I'm going to talk about this very nice behavior that it's poorly studied, I think. And yeah, so let's get started. I have to say that this was pretty much like a treasure hunt at first, because there is not much on the head tilting behavior. Even if a lot of people saw it, I'm sure that if you have a dog, if you watched any kind of video, cute video with dogs on YouTube, you notice this behavior. But it was very, very hard to find anything about it, which was actually a very interesting point of this project, because again, it felt like I was looking for something that wasn't there, and I was one of the first ones discovering it. Anyway, just to give you a little bit of context, in most vertebrates, we know that there is a side preference when it comes to processing sensory information. I'm expecting also invertebrates, some of them at least, to do it, but we don't know much about it yet. Anyway, when it comes to birds or mammals, we know that there is a preference, especially when it comes to one eye or one ear over the other. One of the first studies on the matter was this from Valortigara. I think most of you are familiar with the chicks he used to study. He still studies them. And yeah, from his studies, we know that chicks tend to turn their head or their body when they're looking to a stimuli that something they're interested in, basically. Of course, as I was mentioning, it's not just about chicks, but many other vertebrates have this kind of preference for one side over the other. We know that toads have a preference also in the eye they use, and there is an infamous experiment putting hats on toads and seeing which paw they use to take it off. I think it's in many statistical books, so maybe you're also familiar with this. Then there are two instances from Ockelberg showing that sea lions and horses have a preference for using the right ear when they're listening to conspecific calls. Starlings also tend to prefer one eye over the other. And of course, humans manifest this preference and this asymmetry in the behavior in many, many ways. Just think about it, all of you who are right-handed or left-handed. And also dogs present this kind of asymmetry in their behavior, in their bodies. The starting point will be in 2014, when the researchers here in Hungary actually proved and showed that there is a difference in the brain of the dogs. There is a lateralization, so just as much as ours, their brains is divided in two hemispheres. There are different regions which are also pretty much the same as the ones in the human brain. And we now know that dogs have different responses and different, basically different responses when it comes to different stimuli, of course. In one experiment, they showed how dogs tend to present a side bias for the right when it comes to manipulated meaningless stimuli, which means that they turn the head to the right, so they process that sound with the left side of their brain. Instead, when it comes to a familiar spoken command, they tend to turn their head more on the left, so they process this signal with the right side of the brain. And the same it happens when you tell them something nice like "what a good boy" or "who's the cutest guy ever," and so on. Of course, this kind of the organization in the brain translates in other behaviors. So as we said before, there is a preference for the eye they use when it comes to specific things. When they look at something that is threatening for them or something that is more pleasant, they prefer one eye over the other. They also prefer to sniff things with one nostril over the other. Of course, there is the tail wagging, which is not just for fun, but the inclination of this behavior actually tells us more about what they're trying to communicate. And I don't have a poker of Siniscalcis here, but almost, because Ockelberg actually wrote a review recently about the paw preference in dogs. So just to break the flow, Ockelberg basically showed how there is, again, a paw preference when it comes to specific tasks. So I have to admit that I didn't know, but dogs actually present this difference when it comes to different kind of things they have to do. If you're asking them to step over a bunch of stairs, they will do it maybe with one paw over the other. But if they have to retrieve something from under your couch, they will do it maybe with another paw. The important thing is that this paw preference is also consistent with time, but we don't know for how long this behavior is consistent actually, because the study was 4 months long, so not that much. Anyway, of course, another asymmetrical behavior that we are interested, and I'm interested in, is the head tilting. This one is actually one of our dogs. She's called Amy, and here she's at the lab performing, again, I will show you this very, very cute head tilting just for us. And as I was saying at the beginning, pretty much there is nothing scientific about head tilting in dogs. There are a few ideas that I'm going to present you. I want to be very, very careful when it comes to this. And I want you to keep in mind at all times that everything I'm going to say, it's not published and it's not actual research. It's just speculation, basically. Because the idea was that, yeah, dogs tilt their head because there is something about their sight. Maybe it's related to the ecological meaning of this behavior. Maybe it could be adaptive. We know for sure that it can be a medical problem, of course, and now we have at least one paper that shows that it might be connected to the hearing. Anyway, when it comes to the sight, the idea here is that pretty much there is, of course, a great difference in dogs. There are many, many breeds. They have a very different phenotype. And because we are humans and we like to group things up, basically we came up with this thing called a cephalic index. For which of you are not familiar, it's basically just the ratio between the width and the length of the skull of the dog. And with this, you can basically divide all the breeds into 3 groups. We have the brachycephalic dogs. There are all dogs that have a very flat face. Mesocephalic dogs, which have a cephalic index of pretty much 1. And then we have the dogs with a long nose, so the dolichocephalic dogs. The idea here is that if you are a dolichocephalic dog, you have something big in front of your face and you cannot see very well. And one psychologist came up with this, I don't want to call it an experiment because again, it's not published, it's nothing relatable or anything. But anyway, if you put your fist in front of your face, you will have something blocking your field of view, of course. And the idea is that if you tilt your head, you will see better. I am a bit skeptical about this because, again, if you try simply doing this and tilting your head, I don't think it changes much. I see pretty much the same as before. And actually, again, I have no confirmation of this, but it seems that brachycephalic dogs tilt their heads more often. So this will make no sense. The other idea, sorry about the spoiler. Turn off the audio. The idea comes from the ecological meaning, because many canids and many wild relatives of the dog, such as wolves or coyotes or foxes, present this head tilting behavior, which is very important when it comes to hunting, especially if something is under the ground or under the snow. Here you can see the fox doing this head tilting to basically locate the prey under the snow and then going for the jump. Then we have the adaptive hypothesis, which pretty much says that dogs do this because it's cute. They sort of know that it's cute and they can get away with a lot of things and they can get praised or rewarded for it. So they do it because we like it, which could be the thing. This is actually Whiskey, one of our dogs also. And Whiskey is very important for me and for all our all the researchers here in Hungary, because Whiskey is the first dog that came into this project, basically. I want to mention how and why we started talking about and discussing this head tilting behavior here. Pretty much we were collecting data on another paper, this one that I'm showing you here, about word learning in dogs. And the whole idea started because we knew that dogs can learn, well, we thought we knew that dogs can learn the names of many toys. We knew from the literature that there are at least two dogs, very famous, Rico and Chaser. They were able to learn thousands of toys. And we thought it would be fairly easy to teach names of toys to our dogs. Because I'm sure that if you have a dog at home or if your friend has a dog, they are convinced that they know the name of their toys. If you ask where is the ball or where is this or that, I'm sure you think that they know for sure where it is. And actually, when we were collecting data for this paper, we realized that it's not like that, that only a few dogs can do that. We call these dogs gifted. Whiskey is actually one of these gifted dogs. And for this experiment, we were doing something very simple that I'm going to show you in a second. Basically, we wanted to know if dogs were able to reliably fetch a toy from a different room, so not the same one as where they were with their owner, just to prevent any kind of clever hands effect. So we basically had the owner and the dog in one room with us, or we're doing also at home, so it's not necessarily with us at the department. And then there was another room with all the toys scattered on the floor. This is Max. He's also a gifted dog, and I have subtitles here, so you don't actually, well, I can just play the video, but. So yes, the owner was just asking where Sebastian is, which is a plastic crab. And Max is going to the other room and then is successfully retrieving Sebastian and no other toy. So for this, we during this experiment, also in this video, I can show you again so you can notice too. We observed that every time that the owner was telling something, especially when they were saying the name of the toy, the dogs were doing they were tilting their heads. And this was happening only with the gifted dogs. So we decided to investigate this more, and we went back to check all the videos we have from the experiment we did with these dogs. We had 40 dogs. We had 6 gifted word learner dogs, which are these ones that I already told you that are able to learn the name for sure, to learn the name of their toys. And they were all, well, they are all border collies. And then we had 34 typical dogs. Among these, we had 17 belonging to various breeds and 16 plus 1 border collies. I have this extra one because one of these typical dogs actually showed to be a gifted dog. So we also found out by accident, basically. Anyway, for this study, everything we needed for them to do was to play with their owners, play with toys, and try to learn the names of 2 toys. This was supposed to be done in 3 months. So we followed the owners, we followed the dogs, and together with the trainers here at the university, we basically helped them to, again, train their dogs and play with their dogs. And we wanted to see if these dogs were able to learn the names of any toy. But as I anticipated you before, typical dogs were not even able to learn one name, while gifted dogs learn many. Which is why for experiment number 2, we had pretty much the same setup, but it was only for the gifted word learner dogs. And here we wanted to see how many toys they could learn in months. And I can tell you that Whiskey, the dog that you saw before, knew at the time the names of around 60 toys, while Max is also one of the dogs that I showed you, knew 7. And by the end of this experiment, they knew at least 20 more. So they improved quite a lot in just a few months. And then we had experiment number 3, which was pretty wild, actually. It went under the name of Genius Dog Challenge, and it's the first live broadcast experiment ever. We did this live actually 2 years ago now, and it was in November, between November and December. And here you can see all the gifted dogs. One is missing, but I'll tell you why in a little bit. And during this experiment, they had to do pretty much the same thing. They had the toys all scattered in one room, and they were with the owner in another one. But in this case, they had a higher difficulty, because for the first part of the experiment, they had to learn the names of 6 toys in 1 week. And then for the second part of the experiment, they had to learn the names of 12 toys in 1 week. So it was very, very challenging. If you want to know for how long, and they were all successful, first of all, so they all learned the names of these toys. But if you want to know more about it and for how long they remember these names, we have another paper on this, so you can just Google my name or something and you'll find it out. Or again, the Genius Dog Challenge on Google. But just to give you an idea of how the videos were, what I was watching basically when I was doing the coding. We have here a typical dog on the left, and I'm gonna show you just quickly what's happening. I didn't put any subtitles, but again, the owner is asking in Hungarian, where is this specific toy? I don't remember right now which word she was using. And I will show you again, but you can, or maybe not, yes. But you can see that the dog here is not tilting the head, it's just going, not even looking at the owner. So the coding here was very, very easy. We had 0 tilts, so nothing much to do about this. And then we had this other dog. This is Gaia, another gifted dog. And so here the owner is asking for a stuffed toy, a Daisy Duck toy. And here you can see a very, very nice tilt. So I wrote down that we had 1 tilt, and also the side where the dog was tilting the head. And another thing that also we noticed was the position of the owner, because we wanted to know if the owner was always on the right, always on the left, or right in front of the dog. That was also very important for the analysis, of course. So the first result that we had basically was that, as I was mentioning at first, typical dogs basically never tilted their heads. While gifted word learned dogs, they were tilting their head very, very often, almost 60% of the time. This number could be actually higher, but one of the dogs never tilted the head, so it's lower than it should be. Anyway, the other thing that we realized was that side of the tilt was also very important, because the dogs were always tilting the head on the same side. So you can see here how some dogs were preferring one side over the other, while other 2 dogs were a bit more ambidextrous, basically. And yeah, here you can see all the gifted dogs we had. We had the 6 from before, so those ones who participated in the Genius Dog Challenge. So Gaia, Max, Nalani, Whiskey, Squall, and Rico. And Oliva is one of the typical dogs, which we realized to be a gifted dog. She participated only in experiment number 1 and only for 1 month, because she was very sick and sadly she passed away. But she gave, again, a lot of help for also the owner. She's always helping us with our experiments. So we're very, very happy that we had the chance to meet with her, basically. So again, as I was mentioning before, they all preferred one side over the other. Here you can see that Gaia and Whiskey, they both prefer the left side. They're both females. Max and Nalani actually preferred the right side. Max is a male and Nalani is a female. And Oliva and Rico are, again, kind of ambidextrous. They preferred the left side, but they were also tilting on the right. And as I was also telling you before, Squall never tilted his head. So we don't really know what's happening with him. He's also a gifted dog, but he doesn't do this behavior ever. But just the main findings about this research, we found out that, again, there is a pretty steep difference between typical dogs and gifted dogs. We think that this is because in this context, in this specific scenario where the dog is asking for a toy and they have to go and fetch it, there is basically something happening in their brain, and they have some sort of cross modal match that's happening, and they're hearing the word and then they're thinking about the toy they have to go get, and then they go and they fetch the correct one. As I was mentioning before, we recorded the position of the owner. So we knew if the owner was on one side or the other or in front of the dog. And as you can see here, there was no influence of that. So the dogs were always tilting the head on the same side, no matter what. And the other important thing is consistency. So again, as I was showing you from the results, the dogs were always tilting their heads on the same side, which is pretty interesting because these experiments ran for almost a year, basically. So it's a very, very long period of time. And it would be very interesting to know if this will change at some point during their development. The other thing that I want you to notice is, sorry, the video just started. Oops. Is that, yes, for this study, we had only border collies, but of course, it's not a behavior that it belongs only to border collies. Also, when it comes to this label, gifted word learning dogs, not only border collies are able to learn the names of many toys. Here you have Captain. He's one of the new addition to the project. And I will show you again how cute he is when he tilts the head. Oh, or maybe not. Yeah. And here on the right side, we have Lexi. She's also a new addition. And I want to show you her because 6 is not a great number when it comes to science, of course. We were lucky enough actually to have 6 dogs in the same study, 6 gifted dogs in the same study. All the studies mentioning disability in dogs always had 1 individual. So again, we were very, very lucky with this. But right now, the number is increasing. We have almost 25 at the moment. Lexi is, again, one of the latest addition. And here you can see how cute she is when the owner asks for a specific toy. Curious enough, Lexi tilts the head on both sides. If you notice, when the owner mentions the name of the toy, Jose, this cactus thingy, she tilts the head first on the one side and then on the other. So it's going to be very, very interesting to code also these new dogs to see how they behave and if there is any kind of pattern. Because right now, out of 7 dogs, we found basically nothing in common. Yeah, if you want to read more about this, and you can read our paper, An Exploratory Analysis on Head Tilting Dogs. Is an open access paper, so feel free to download it, share it, and all of that. If you want to know more about the project, just feel free to text me or, of course, ask now. And you can also reach us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and the website of the Genius Dog Challenge. And this last thing, I don't know if you can see it properly, but they sent it to me when we published the article, and it's pretty nice strip showing pretty much what's happening in the dog's brain. So yeah, that's all from me. And I'll stop sharing. Okay.
Thanks, Andrea, for this great presentation in terms of content and in terms of visuals. Yeah, it was really, really clear, and it was really easy for people to follow through. So thanks very much for that. We are open for questions. I don't see any in the chat. I only see clapping hands, not raised hands yet. So I'm just starting with a question of myself, just from the results one. You mentioned that, I mean, first, it's really striking to have such a strong difference in terms of the frequency of these head tilts in the individual dogs. You mentioned that you did not see this except for this one dog in the non-gifted, non-word learners. With you didn't see this, do you mean that it was completely absent in the other dogs, or that it was only happening occasionally, like in 1 out of 20 dogs or something like that, or 1 time out of 20 trials, or it wasn't completely absent? So
it wasn't completely absent, but pretty much, because only 2 dogs that I can remember right now were doing it. And out of many, many trials we did in the course of these 3 months, they did it once or twice.
Okay. Okay. So
While
really,
if you watch, sorry.
So it's really, for most of the dogs, you can say that it's kind of a different in kind, basically, that they do not show this behavior at all.
Yeah, and if you watch a video with a gifted dog, you will see that, again, other than Squall, they do it every single moment. Anytime that the owner says the word that it's the name of the toy for them in their language, they tilt the head.
Okay, thanks. Just a quick follow-up. You, in the last video, you showed one of the new dogs in the lab showing several tilts when you request a toy. How high was the variation of this behavior in the 6 or 7 other dogs? Like, was this kind of consistent? So dogs that only tilted once in every single fetching event, and dogs that do it 3 times, or was there variation within the individuals as well?
So most of the dogs did it only once. The whole setup works pretty much the same way every time. So I think they got used to the formula. So they just sit, or they stand next to the owner. They look right at them. You can totally see that there is something going on in their brain, and they're like, okay, they're switching and they're focusing. And when the owner says literally, where is this? They tilt the head and then they run to the other room to fetch the toy. So there is usually no time for more tilts or anything. In this video, you saw more, probably because Lexi was right with the owner there and the toys were right under her, basically. So it was not the testing situation. This was just for fun, basically.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. We have 3 questions in the chat. Shelley's asking, or noting that she noticed that the dogs are all working dogs. Do you think this bias results from which dogs or breeds you are gifted, or which owners are teaching working with their dogs?
So yes, at first we thought it could be related to that, but actually we also trained 16 more border collies, and they never learned any of the names of their toys. So there might be something related to the breed, because yes, we have 6 against the others, and they're all border collies, and also the new ones, most of them are border collies. But we also had Yorkshire, she also passed away. We have a German Shepherd, we have a Pekingese, and we have some mixed breeds. We have a Labrador now, so it seems to be more likely to happen in a border collie, but not exclusively. And the second part was,
yeah, whether this bias is due to the breeds, or whether that the owners are teaching or working with the dogs in a particular way because they're working dog breeds.
They all do different things. All the owners work or play with their dogs or train their dogs in different ways. The only common thing is that, first of all, they didn't know that their dogs were special. And second of all, they don't really train their dogs for toys, but they only play with them. Simply saying, go get this, take that, where is this? The dogs were learning. And we did exactly the same thing with all the other 34, well, 33, because one of them was also a gifted dog, and it didn't work.
Thanks, Andrea. Holly's asking whether you're planning any future research in terms of what the side preference means, if anything.
I would love to, yes. Also because we don't know if the preference for the side preference when it comes to tilting reflects in any kind of other side preferences. So there are many famous and very easy tests you can do with your dog. There are basically, you put something in front of them like a Kong, and they have to get food out of it, or again, they have to step on stairs or off stairs. So it would be very interesting to see if there is a match in these kind of behaviors.
Have you tried this already with the gifted dogs in the lab?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Yeah, I would have been interested in this as well, whether there's kind of consistent laterality in different
the main
behaviors.
issue here is that, as I was telling you before, we don't really test at the lab anymore, but we test only on Skype and with the owners.
Okay.
So we are kind of constricted by the time that they can offer us. So we have
thanks.
many experiments running at the same time, but it's hard to find time for more.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. Janya has another question. Does that mean that head tilting is an indicator of intelligence or understanding of words, or is it only related to the recalling of learned information?
It's a very good question, and it's not related to intelligence at all. All these dogs are equally trainable and all of that. It's just that some of these dogs have this ability. We pretty much, in the paper that I was mentioning, the word learning, we pretty much associated this ability to talent. So as much as in humans, you have people that have like the talent for music or for writing or for drawing, these dogs are able to pick up words and they remember those words, specifically when it comes to object labels, basically. And the tilting seems to be, again, a way for them to click and think about what they have to do, and then they go to fetch the object. I know for sure that the tilting is also something that typical dogs do. I was mentioning when I started the talk that there are many videos on also on YouTube, TikTok. There was a challenge where you were supposed to talk to your dog and say chicken or squirrel or nice words for them, and they tilt the head a lot, all of them, even if they're not gifted dogs. So it clearly means that they're listening somehow. They're paying attention specifically to those words, and for some reason, when they pay attention to those words, they tilt the head. I just want to add that I just want to add something else, that it seems, at least for humans, that we tilt the head when we are confused. So maybe it might be the same in dogs, because we say many things and maybe they recognize one word, like again, chicken or squirrel or park. So maybe they're trying to listen to these flow words. We always blabbing at them, and they're like, okay, but what are you saying now? Well, are we doing something? Are we getting ready to go outside? Or so maybe they're also confused.
You mentioned that if I got this correctly from video recordings and video footage, that you saw that the dogs are tilting the head in many different occasions as well. Is this sorry if I missed that? Is this consistent with the dogs that only that tilt the head when they have to fetch a toy? So these are the only dogs that tilt the head as well, or is this head tilting? Because when I try to remember interactions with dogs I had in my life, I somehow can imagine that many of these dogs show similar head tilting. It could also be that this is some iconic movement that just gets or was memorized, and I now try to project it on many other dogs as well. So it kind of feels intuitive to link this to dog behavior, but it apparently is not very common when we would look at the total population of dogs.
So yeah, usually dogs do it quite often. I don't have numbers or anything really, because again, there is no research on this. I don't know what is about the typical dogs. I would like to do something more. I know that there is one person at least working on this, and I think she will publish very soon. So hopefully we'll have more insights on this. But when it comes to typical dogs, I have just as much questions as you, basically.
Alina is having another question. Can you make a wild guess? Why do we think that some dogs are gifted and others are not?
Well, that's that's pretty much a wild guess. I would say, and we hope at least to find something like that, that there is some kind of gifted gene or something like that. Because again, it's not exclusively for border collies, but it's kind of odd that mostly border collies have this. So maybe when we did the selective breeding for these dogs, we didn't select just for trainability and for them to listen to us pretty much, but we also selected for this kind of thing. And or maybe just random, because again, then we have other breeds that also can do this. And another thing that I have to mention is that all these dogs that you saw, and also the other ones that we have now, they're scattered all over the world. So we have only 2 dogs in Hungary and in Budapest, but all the others you saw, they are in Spain, in Brazil, in Norway, in the Netherlands, in the US, in the UK, in Australia. So sure, maybe it's genetic, but how those genes ended up in so many places? Because selective breeding is of course a thing and it's still happening, but then you have all these lines, and a dog from the US is pretty different from a dog here in Europe. So
Thanks, Andrea. Laura has another question, but first would like to thank you for the presentation. And she thinks it opens a lot of new questions. For example, have you found differences between brachycephalic breeds versus meso or dolichocephalic breeds?
I think there is something coming out soon about this. As I was saying, I'm not sure at all, but I think that brachycephalic dogs do it more often, which I don't really have an explanation for it. They are supposed to have a bad sight, at least when it comes to the close distance. So maybe they do it for focusing the attention also when it comes to visual stimulus. But I don't really know. Again, the idea at first was that dolichocephalic dogs should do it more often because they have this impairment in front of their faces, but they don't really do it that often. Or at least, again, it's just speculation. I don't have numbers. I don't know if it's actually then one way or the other.
Thanks. Janya has another question. She's asking whether it could be that dogs which the owners talk to them more often can pick up birds better.
That I don't know for sure, but I know that some of our gifted dogs are very sensitive when it comes to sounds, meaning that they don't like loud sounds. They don't like too much noise. So we have one of them, and the owner basically, she lives alone and she never talks to her dog because it's just her and the dog. And when we do the testing, the dog gets overexcited because she's talking too much compared to the usual. So I don't know. I know for sure that these dogs are very, very playful. They enjoy playing a lot. They can keep going for hours, basically. They're very toy motivated. And again, all the owners thought that this was pretty much the average dog. So they were all having their first dogs, or most of them, and they thought that, yeah, it's normal behavior. And I'm sure that if you ask most people, they will tell you, as I was mentioning, that all dogs know the names of their toys.
Thanks. Holly has a last question here. This is true of brachycephalic dog breeds too. So I wonder if noise sensitivities might link to the head tilting as well, or to the gifted
Could
dogs.
be. One thing that I would love to do is to test this behavior and to test it with different kind of sound stimuli, just to see the response these dogs have. Also, when it comes to when I was showing you the video with the fox, maybe it might be related to sound location or something, which on one hand is a possibility because of course it's something that it's we can see in other species. But on the other hand, then it would change according to the position of the owner. And it never changed in our experiments. Despite the position of the owner, the dogs were always consistent. So that's very curious, I would say. Again, it's just 6 dogs, but again, I think it's pretty odd.
Thanks, Andrea. Jen has another question. Again, thanks for the talk, Andrea. I might have missed this. According to your knowledge, does head tilting ever happen during communication between conspecifics or any situation when they are not interacting with humans?
Again, no research on this, so it's just speculation, just anecdotes. But I would say that it mostly happens, if not only with humans. So I don't think dogs tilt their head when they're looking at each other, or at least I cannot even think about one instance when I observed this. I'm sure that now someone is gonna send me a video with their dogs doing that, but I cannot think of it really.
And I think have a very good impression what everyone who is listening to the talk and to the question is going to do in the next days. just watching the next dogs that they see, whether or not they tilt their head and in which situation they do this. We have no questions left in the chat box. There are no raised hands in the audience as far as I can see. So I think we can I think we can wrap it up here. Again, Andrea, thanks for joining. Thanks for this wonderful talk, for this wonderful presentation. I think we've learned a lot about a behavior that we actually did not know basically anything about. So thanks for highlighting this to us. And before we're leaving, I just wanted to remind everyone that on January 24th, we will have Professor Rupert Palmer joining us. He's a cortisol expert, and he's going to talk about the links between cortisol and hormone measures and stress responses in animals. So please join us again in 2 weeks. And again, thanks all of you for joining today. And Andrea, you for your presentation. So have a good evening or a good day wherever you're located right now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.